Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story, entitled Mother Tried to Take My Friend's Truck and Stabbed Him with a Pocket Knife when he said no. Not my story, but that of a friend who authorized me to post it here when I asked him. For starters, my friend owns a blue 05 Dodge Ram 1500. It is not the most reliable model of truck, but he's kept it in good shape and left it looking stock, save for some aftermarket alloy wheels. He tells me he was willed a truck from his grandfather when he passed away 7 years ago. Caleb isn't a mechanic, but learned how to do a lot of work on this truck himself. I even helped him redo the undercoating on it and polish the paint. This story takes place around 3 years ago. My friend tells me this was really the one and only time he's dealt with an entitled parent. He described her as looking like a T-bot, short and stout. So from this point on, the entitled mother will be referred to as T-bot. For the sake of giving him a name, my friend in this story will be referred to as Caleb. Rewind 3 years and our story begins at a local supermarket whose name rhymes with Stolmart. Caleb always goes out of his way to try and get as close to a parking space to the store as possible. And on this day he managed to do so. He went in and did the bulk of his food shopping for the next couple of weeks and everything seemed fine. But of course now comes the enter the Karen part of the story. Caleb was pushing his cart out when he saw an older woman trying to force open the rear door of the canopy on his truck. Which is odd because you could clearly see inside that he did not really have anything of value in it other than a few tools. She did not seem to notice him until he was super close and said to her, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" T-bot jumped back like lightning struck, but then quickly started playing the little old lady card. Though this woman was about 50 tops, she put her hand over her heart and said in an over-exaggerated way,
"Oh dear, you shouldn't sneak up on people like that, young man."
"Yeah, sure, what are you doing?"
"I was just trying to get in my truck. I locked my keys inside by mistaking, can't get in."
"Lady, that is not your truck."
"Yes it is, I just got it last year."
"Oh really? Then what model year is it?"
"It's a 2010. Just look at how clean and new it looks."
"No lady, it's an 05. I know this because it's my truck." Caleb then produced the keys and pressed a button on the fob to unlock the door. He said T-bot first went white, then red with anger. It is pretty much full stereotypical Karen after this.
"Listen here, you little jerk. You don't deserve a truck this nice. It would be a lot better for someone like my son. He's a local college student, you know, and he needs a nice shiny vehicle like this to get around in."
"Are you a looby, lady? My truck isn't for sale. And even if it was, how much would you give me for it?" T-bot started to look smug and pulled a checkbook from her purse.
"I can give you $1,500 for it right now."
Caleb facepalmed so hard he said he hurt his nose. "Lady, my truck is worth several times that, and I personally kept up with its maintenance for several years. There is no way I'd take $1,500 for it. Plus there is no way I'd hand over the title unless I was paid with cash. I do not trust checks." T-bot moved to get up in his face, which was funny because he was a full foot taller than her. She was about to speak when Caleb silenced her with a loud, "Don't even think about it, lady. My truck isn't yours for the taking. It never will be. Now leave me alone so I can unload my groceries in peace and go home." He then did his best to try and ignore T-bot as she began screaming and saying that she'd call the police. Caleb then just yelled back, "Call them then." And she actually did. She pulled out an old flip phone and began fake crying while speaking with the person on the other end. Caleb finished loading his groceries and locked the truck because he wasn't about to drive off with the police on their way. When the police arrived, Teapot actually flopped down onto the ground and started fake crying like a baby while flailing her arms and legs around and pointing at Caleb, screaming, "He knocked me to the ground and stole my truck. And then he said he'd come back later and hurt my family. Arrest him now." The two police officers that had shown up were an older man with a mustache and a younger one that Caleb said he guessed was a rookie, because a younger cop was immediately getting ready to aim his taser when the older one stopped them so they could assess the situation first. Caleb raised both hands and calmly stated that nothing Teapot said was true, and that she'd been harassing him since he caught her trying to break into his truck. Teapot, while still having a tantrum on the ground, yelled, "He's lying! Arrest him!" The rookie officer spoke with Teapot while the mustached one spoke with Caleb. Since he was so close to the store, Caleb stated that he bet the security cameras picked up the whole thing. It was at this point that Teapot gave up on her act, started screaming like a banshee while running at Caleb with a small pocket knife she'd pulled from her purse. Caleb tried to back away and held his hands up, and the knife went right through his left palm, which he described to me as one of the most painful things he'd ever felt. She pulled a knife out and tried to stab him again when the rookie tackled her to the ground and he tased her. Teapot flailed around and started screaming and sobbing like a baby. When she finally stopped moving, the mustached officer cuffed her while the rookie called for an ambulance. Teapot was loaded into the police cruiser, kicking and screaming, "Help! Police brutality! Someone help me!" As for Caleb, he was taken to the hospital to tend to the stab wound in his hand. Turns out, he was incredibly lucky as the knife had gone right between the bones and not damaged any tendons. Later in court, Teapot actually tried to plead not guilty, but the evidence against her was overwhelming and she was charged with attempted murder, attempted grand theft auto, and a few other things. The judge sentenced her to be put in a mental facility because she clearly was not well up there. As soon as that happened, Teapot flipped out and began trying to charge at the judge, but she was quickly grabbed by the guards and hauled out of the courtroom. Also during the trial, Caleb met Teapot's son. Turns out, he'd gone no contact with her as soon as he was old enough to move out. She was the most controlling and overbearing mother you could imagine. And ever since then, she's been trying to show up at his apartment and bring him nice things he suspected she'd stolen just to try and get him to talk to her. Guess she figured Caleb's truck would have gotten her back in her son's good graces or something. This story is getting written now because Caleb decided to check up on Teapot by searching her name online. She's still at the mental facility and he found out from her sons through social media that she looks likely to be staying there for quite some time to come. Next story. Being behind a computer screen does not exempt you from the law. Some background information. I frequently draw for fun, and I post it online. However, there is one website in particular that I don't like to post too much on because I'm not fond of the formatting system there, but I do sometimes occasionally post there. Now onto the story. I've been browsing the website one day and noticed that the rating on one of my art pieces dropped because someone left a bad review. I checked it out to see if there was possibly any constructive criticism, but it was only the typical "oh my god, this is so cringe, get off the internet you freak." It was that kind of thing. I kindly replied that if he didn't like what I made, he could go on his merry way. And then I blocked him and did not think any more of it. And then I started noticing the ratings on all of my other pieces were beginning to drop. Turns out blocking someone on the website does not prevent them from being able to review your artwork. and that guy was not too happy about being blocked and basically being told to get lost. So he began leaving terrible reviews on all of my art, which ranged from him calling me a worthless witch to him mocking my pitiful art. I asked him multiple times to knock it off and leave me alone, especially since I had already blocked him. He refused to and basically told me that it was the internet and that he could do whatever the hell he wanted. He then proceeded to call me several more terrible things, and then he told me to kill myself by drowning myself. Now this was a straw that broke the camel's back for me, and I broke down in tears before contacting one of my best friends, TF, one of my best friends who happens to be going into the police force. I called him for comfort. Now it's worth mentioning that TF is very protective of his friends and has no qualms with absolutely obliterating anyone who does something to hurt them. So he asked me to send him screenshots of the things that dude said to me. Confused, I complied and I threw in screenshots of me asking him to stop too. I asked CF why he wanted the screenshots, and he told me that what that guy was doing was blatant harassment, and that with these screenshots, I had more than enough proof to press charges against that guy for harassment and emotional damages. CF even offered to set me up with his family lawyer. I ended up first asking him to contact that guy and give him one last chance to leave me be, or I would sue him. CF agreed and messaged that guy, telling him that he was with the police department and needed to respond immediately. He responded and CF basically told him to leave me alone, but he pretty much laughed at him and said something along the lines of, "Or what?" To which CF responded by telling him he would get a warrant to obtain his IP address and that he would be sent a summons to court. He then explained that I had more than enough evidence to sue him for harassment and emotional damage and that I already had a lawyer lined up if he didn't back off. CF then went on to tell him that just because he was behind a computer screen does not mean that you can harass people and get away with it. Apparently this really scared him because he backpedaled big time. He apologized for everything and begged me to not press charges against him. I agreed so long as he never spoke to me again, and I haven't heard a peep from that guy since. And the moral of the story here, folks, is that just because you're online and think you're completely anonymous doesn't give you the right to be a jerk of a person. Especially not to someone who has a comp for one of her best friends. Next story. No insurance scam for you. This was a few years ago when I was finishing up my undergrad. I work at a cheap chain restaurant in a small town that most of the local high school kids work at. One day my friend came in all flustered because she just rear-ended a lady at the stoplight around the corner. Nothing too serious, just a dent. I think the police report said she was going 5 miles per hour as she was slowing down to stop before turning. The friend fully admits she wasn't paying attention, but is upset because the other lady clearly was going to make this a huge deal. She refused to talk to my friend before the cops got there when the friend tried to give her insurance information. Immediately complained of a sore back and neck when the cop showed up and demanded medical attention. As an aside, I can sort of understand this since where I live, you have to see a doctor within a certain amount of time to make an insurance claim. However, according to my friend, her attitude was completely off about it, and especially being that my friend was completely taking responsibility for the matter. Anyways, fast forward a few days. That lady refused what her insurance company offered and hired a lawyer to sue for more money to cover intense pain and traumatic suffering. Essentially, my friend had really good insurance, which is nice if you want to make sure you're covered, but then can provoke people to sue your insurance company for the full 50k plus amount. I think my friend's max coverage was 100k if I remember correctly. We are complaining about what a rude lady this is when a busboy who goes to the local high school says, Oh, my cheer coach said she was in an accident on X day. The same as my friends. We laugh about small town syndrome and how weird it would be if it was the same lady. Looked up the staff on the high school website, and sure enough, the coach is the same woman. When we tell the guy the next day and how much she's suing the friend for, he says, "Wow, that's a lot." And she told us that she's not even hurt. And she takes off her neck brace before practice and goes through the full routines with us. So I don't know the lady's personal med information, but clearly your pain isn't that intense if you're doing cartwheels and backflips and not even wearing the neck brace. So I paid our co-worker $25 to take photos and videos of their next practice with her in it. I give them to my friend sends them to the insurance company. They were very interested in them. As far as I recall, the lady lost the lawsuit. Ended up with less money than what they originally offered, as they now did not offer anything for medical care, and even then had to handle with being charged for insurance fraud, supposedly. The outcome of which I don't know. And again, the insurance company made an initial claim offer to cover the minor damage to the car and basic medical care to cover checkups for the whiplash, with the option for her to bill them or ask them for more money if it did progress to something more serious. But no, she figured it was her money and she wanted it now. And she tried to pull a scam which would have skyrocketed my friend's insurance premiums had she gotten the full amount. Thankfully, that was not the case. Next story. My dog ate my homework. No, he really did. When I was in the 3rd grade, my bloodhound sniffed out the popcorn balls and candy in my backpack from a school Halloween event, and he ate that along with my homework from my class. I copied the questions at the end of the chapter and answered all 10 of them. Homework was usually just a printout of these 3 to 5 of these questions. I tried turning in my handwritten homework substitute, but my teacher was having none of it. She said I should have just done the homework she assigned. I tried explaining that my dog ate it, but she cut me off by saying she wasn't going to believe that story. I insisted that I was telling the truth and got punished for it. After sitting in the corner for the majority of class, I was feeling pretty angry about the whole situation. I asked my teacher what I could possibly do to prove I was telling the truth, even offering to have my parents on the phone to back up my story. She said she would need some solid evidence before she would believe me. Cue the malicious compliance. I went home that Friday and followed my dog around with a Ziploc bag. Once I got what I needed, I hid it in the large freezer on the porch until Monday. As soon as I entered class, I placed the solid evidence on my teacher's desk, and she freaked the hell out. I was cursed and dragged physically by my arm and backpack to the principal office, and threatened with everything from suspicion to legal action. I pointed out that my evidence had chunks of paper throughout it, including large enough chunks to make out that it had been printer papers with words on it. My principal listened to both of us to get caught up to what had happened. I was pardoned for any perceived wrongdoing, whereas my teacher was missing from class for the next week, with a substitute trying his best to wrangle us kids. My parent threatened legal action against the teacher in the interim, and while I'm not sure if they pressed charges, she wasn't at my school by the time Thanksgiving rolled around. Maybe next time, just give the kids who hand-wrote double the homework questions full credit or call the parents first. Idiot. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.